G'day you mob, welcome to this episode of Pete vs Plants. I am Pete, these are the plants. Today we are going to be, again, going through some prop boxes. I'm hoping we'll be able to make it through all three of these relatively quickly. I guess we'll see how we go, but as you can probably see, stuff is trying to bust out, trying to escape, and so we should probably help it. Yeah, so in the previous video, I did a bunch of Melanochrysum and some Devil's Ivy. You can check that out above. And today I think, well, I guess we just go through it and see what we have. So I've been eyeing off this box for a while now, and I think it's got a whole bunch of Philodendron gigas growing in here. So I'm gonna leave that, I think, as you can see. Well, maybe you can't. But as you can see down the bottom there, I'm holding these in place. They're kind of slowly growing roots and slowly growing leaves and little spikes. But what I do have in here that I think needs to come out, which looks absolutely magnificent, if I do say so myself, are these Alocasia sculprams. So the story behind these is that I bought a bunch of these to try and save from Bunnings that had hit the deck, they carked it, they were overwatered, they were dying, they weren't looking too hot. And so I bought them home, I bought them and brought them home. But they just didn't have a good time of it, and I found it really hard to revive them. So what I ended up doing in the end was pulling it out of the pot and just taking the corms off that I found. Here is one of them that just went off like a frog in a sock. So yeah, he's been sort of right near the top of this guy. So I'm gonna take him out today. And it's sort of the same story for this guy, another corm that has gone bananas from the same scalprum, the Samar lance. And it's hit the top and is sort of bending down. So again, I think I'll take him out and hopefully he can handle the lower humidity, although yeah, I might have to maybe put him in another prop box if there's space at the top, but you can see kind of right at the top there hits the surface. So it may not be the best idea. Is my mic on? Yeah, I'm just double checking. Sometimes I forget to turn it on. And the other ones, there's two in here. They seem to be popping, so they're slowly coming along, but I will leave them inside here. And this, I think, is the main sort of, I don't know if you'd call it a corm, but it was the main stem. And it's actually shooting off some little corms to the side here. And the roots have come down, but it's done nothing in terms of growth at the top. So again, I'm just gonna leave him in here. And with the gigas, or the gigas, they're looking good, but they are taking their sweet ass time, guys. I don't know if you guys have much experience with the gigas and Melanochrysum, but I have found them to be a total pain in the ass when trying to propagate them. They just take so long, they take forever. And I'm looking around because I kind of want to fill this out with a bit more moss. You can see there's a bit of a gap there now. Hopefully I can show you without tipping things over. See that gap there? I guess we'll leave it like that for now. So yeah, didn't really get through all of that prop box. Or can we combine these? You know what, let's try and combine these with the leftovers from the prop box from before. That might be a better option. So, how can I do this? I have in here a bunch of Epipremnum, the Devil's Ivy. I think this is Melanochrysum here, these two, and then some ZZ plants down the bottom here, Black Ravens. So I think I'm just gonna try and sort of scooch everything up, hopefully without doing too much damage to everything in terms of movement. And I'll see if I can just scoop these guys out of here. Hopefully it comes out as a single kind of mat of moss. Beautiful. I will take that and I'm going to try and gently place it into the side. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Bloody ripper. Bloody perfect. And this one, I assume this is gigas, but not doing anything. Bugger. All right, put him in there and I will try and scooch a bit of moss around to fill in that space. And yeah, I guess she's sweet. Okay, cool. Take some of this moss out too, fill her up, boom. And all right, there you go. Boom, too easy. So that one has been 2 boxes combined. We have these 2 in here, though I'm not sure what to do going forward with that. I may have to either put some things in there to justify the space or move these guys somewhere else, but that is a problem for future Pete. All right, next box. So the next box is Scindapsus. I think mainly Scindapsus. No, there's 2 Scindapsus in here, and then there's a bunch of wet sticks. And I don't know what they are. I think it might be neon Pothos, so the neon Epipremnum, I think that's what it is. I always forget. The annoying thing about the term Pothos is that, and this is the thing that kind of irks me as someone who has a biology degree or has a few of them and, you know, studied taxonomy at university. Pothos is itself its own aeroid genus, and it doesn't look anything like Scindapsus, Epipremnum, or do we also use that for philodendron sometimes? Yeah, sometimes I see things labeled as Pothos and I'm like, this confuses me so hard because there is a genus that is Pothos and it doesn't look anything like these guys. I don't know, I think there's like, we've just used that terminology for a long time, but it's like, it'd be like, what, I'm trying to think of a good example of 2 different genera that if you use one name on the other one, it'd be really bad. It'd be like calling an alligator a crocodile, right? It would just be, I mean, I guess people may do that. I'm trying to think, what would be a good example? All right, calling your average dog a fox. That'd be the equivalent. So saying that this dog is, I think, is it lupus? Lupus is the red fox, is it? Who's testing my knowledge. But yeah, if you were to keep calling dogs foxes, you know, I've got my Labrador fox with me today, or if you were calling foxes, check out these dogs, it would kind of be like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're not dogs, and the dogs aren't foxes. Anyway, so that's me having my rant, but yeah, it irks me a little bit when I always hear Pothos, and I'm like, they're not Pothos, they're not damn Pothos. Wow, okay, so these have not done much at all. All right, that one's done a lot. This one has not done very much. Why? I don't understand. Scindapsus seems to be so hit and miss with different propagation techniques. Like, I've had this in the prop box. I think these guys have been in here for the same amount of time, I assume. You know, they look like they've been taken from the same plant. And one of them just hits the ground running and has these huge roots, although the leaf looks like it's kind of dying. Although they're not that crazy. They've been in here for probably 3 or 4 months. I always find Scindapsus really difficult to root, to be honest, unless it is using the Aeroponics system. Got some videos up here you can check out with the Aeroponics. That seems to be the trick with propagating anything. You put it into Aeroponics, and I remember saying, the guy was like, yeah, you'll have roots emerging within 7 to 10 days, and I was just thinking, bullshit, that's such bullshit. You are such a pothead, mate. There's no chance. Maybe with weed, but with aeroids, I don't think you know aeroids. And as we saw in those videos, guys, we tried to do it with the brandies, the brantianums, and they rooted within, 10 days. Like, the roots were emerging. And within 2 months, they had roots that were like almost a foot long. I was just like, what the fuck? What the fuck? So I think it must be that combination of moisture and oxygen and humidity that just really sends things off. So I guess, thinking about the prop box here, the missing factor might just be that movement of air and water amongst the roots, because they're kind of sitting there stagnant. The airflow isn't really happening much. So don't know, but it is a very interesting kind of problem. Like this, I would expect to happen within the first month of putting this into Aeroponics, that sort of growth within a month. And this is probably 3 to 4 months, if not longer, that it's been sitting here. And they look good, but it's just taken its sweet ass time. And the same thing here, this has been 3 to 4 months, and that's the extent of the root growth. Anyway, so what to do with these guys? Because to be honest, that doesn't look like it's ready to be potted up at all, but I really don't care too much about these cuttings, sorry to say, because I have this guy up here from where these cuttings came, growing away, and that's about, I think it's 5 or 6 plants growing up there, all Scindapsus pictus, so I probably don't need another 2, but we'll give them a fighting chance, guys. So I'm gonna chuck some moss. I guess we'll do this, try and do this right. I'm gonna try and wrap the roots in the moss like so, making sure that the top where the growth points is going to come out is towards the top of the moss, because if those get kind of sunken down too much, you can end up in a bit of trouble if the growth tip can't come out through the substrate. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to shove them into this little cup, and hopefully they take off. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. These leaves look like they're on the way out, so I wouldn't be surprised if they cark it in the next week or two, especially once they have now been taken out of prop box humidity. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see. And that's the good thing with this, guys. When you take these kinds of cuttings from common things that you can find everywhere and you don't really care too much about, you get to try things. So I get to now see what happens when I take these guys straight out of a prop box, chuck them on a shelf. I'll try and keep the moss moist, but are the leaves going to completely shrivel up and die instantly? Are they going to perk up a bit? What's going to happen? Nobody knows. Okay, and now we have, that looks like, yeah, okay, so that's a wet stick where the middle has rotted and the outsides are good. So the node in there has rotted. So that's cooked, mate. You're cooked. You're out of here. Oh, okay, so this one has some nice roots with no growth point. I love just the sort of randomness when it comes to propagating things of when and how they decide to shoot out heaps of roots, but absolutely no growth point there. Nothing is activated. And yet you will have other ones that activate a growth point and have bugger all roots. And I assume it is just all about the hormone balance that you end up with in the cuttings. But I don't know if it's like a biological thing that takes place after you've taken the cuttings and based on the conditions, it produces, say, more auxin than it does. There's another hormone that starts with C that I always forget. I think the auxin one is related to, I think if you have higher amounts of auxin, it's related to leaf growth. And if it's the other way around, the inverse, you end up with more root growth initially. But yeah, if you know more about this, let me know, because I'm always perplexed at why cuttings from the same plant under the same conditions decide to push out a leaf first with no roots or roots first with no leaf. And sometimes they do both, right? Sometimes they just shoot out both. And I assume it's those two hormones primarily and the balances of them. I assume it's probably also more complex than that, but I don't know. Yeah, let me know. And same thing here again. No real growth point development, but epic roots. Look at that. Crazy. Crazy. You crazy girl. And it's funny too, there's like another there's the growth point here has grown out a little bit, and then the leaf has died at the end here, but it's pushed out a little root. I don't know I'll use my head as a background here, guys. Hopefully you can see there's actually two roots coming out of it, but no real growth point coming out. Too funny. And I assume those are the same things? I'm not sure. Oh man, to be honest, I don't know if I'm gonna keep these or not, guys. I think that was more just for me seeing if I could propagate them. But at least we got a lot of moss here. I might air it up a bit, move it around, and get it ready for whatever else we're going to propagate in there in the future. Or just a blank one that we can use the moss from, for moss poles or whatever else. So what am I gonna do with these guys? Do I bother? That is the question. Oh man, I am really one of those suckers who just hates the idea of throwing plants out and cuttings out. I might just chuck it into a little cup here, see what happens. Waste not, want not. So I'm just wrapping it all up in a little bit of moss. And then we will hopefully wedge it into the cup here. There we go. Probably needs a bit of moss on top because the roots are exposed. I guess this one goes into the suck it and see pile with the Scindapsus. Guess we'll see how it goes. But I don't really have too much emotional attachment to that guy or those guys, if they survive or not. Sorry to say. All right, so next up we've got some Rhaphidophora tetrasperma and some, I think it was global green that you guys suggested. So this was the free cutting that I got when I got, what was the plant? This was when I got plant fished. So I'll put the video above. This was when I got my my Anthurium veitchii that I thought was going to be a really big plant because they had used the photos that suggested it was going to be huge, and it turned out to be tissue culture. So yeah, go check that video out where I unbox it and I'm like, where's the rest of it? Where the fuck is the rest of it? But yeah, so I've had it in water on a heat mat for ages. It is definitely time to kind of propagate, to pot it up. I think most of these roots in here are from that Epipremnum, but I also got some Rhaphidophora, and I don't know if you guys are going to hate me or not, but I kind of prop lifted that. And I'll tell you the story and you can tell me whether or not it was okay. But effectively, this wasn't from a shop, it wasn't from another person's house, technically. Well, it was, but we went to a place where we had an Airbnb near the beach with my family, and I got really annoyed because when we went into the house, the first thing I noticed was how many plants they had in the house that were all dying. They were all dying. They all had not been watered. It was like the real estate agent had obviously just gone to Bunnings, bought up a shitload of plants and just chucked them in the house and then never touched them again. So there was Monstera deliciosas that were dying. There was a few ficus that were dying. There was this Epipremnum Rhaphidophora in the bathroom. And the story was effectively, it was in like a basket above the bath and it had these trailing vines coming off it. And a whole bunch of them had died in the middle of the vines, and so there were a few tips that were alive, and they were the ones that I ended up taking because I couldn't help myself, guys. I actually watered all the plants and gave some of them a prune to get rid of the dead. The Rhaphidophora, for instance, I ended up pruning off all the dead branches, and that was why I ended up taking some of these cuttings, because I was like, they're healthy, but I'm just going to throw them in the trash. So, you know, they're just going to die now. I've separated them from the plant, so what's the point? Anyway, that is the only time I have ever prop lifted, taken a plant from someone else's property, but I imagine that no one would have had a problem with it because in reality, what I was doing was trying to make the plants healthier. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you guys, what do you think? Is that okay? Is it not okay? Is it justified? Is it unjustified? Should you always leave someone's plants alone like that, even in an Airbnb when you can see that they're clearly suffering? Is it, not your problem? I find it really difficult as a plant parent now to see plants in someone else's house that are having a shit time of it and not do something about it if I can. I don't know if that's just being like a bit of a nosy Nancy, but yeah. I've been lightly tugging at these while I've been chatting to you and working out how I can get these out without breaking the roots, and I'm trying to find one that is kind of loose to come out. Yeah, okay. So, and the reason I wanted to grab these Rhaphidophora, the reason I actually ended up taking these off the dead branches that I pruned off the plant, because I already have Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, but these ones are the really small leafed ones. The whole plant there had leaves about this size and they hadn't actually sized up, whereas the plants that I have at my house, I'll go get one. I'll show you what I've got, what I'm working with, but my Rhaphidophora seems to be a lot larger. And I mean, it's probably been taken from a large cutting, so perhaps that's the thing, it's just a maturity thing. This leaf's dying off, I'll remove that. But they tend to be a lot larger like this, and the vine is a lot thicker. And the interesting thing with this one that I've noticed recently, and it'll be fun to see if it continues, mine's kind of skeleton keyed up a little bit. Like these most recent leaves on this vine look like skeleton key. I don't know if you can see it, and it's so weird. It has like this little fenestration here, but this leaf came out like a skeleton key. Oh, the previous one too, it sort of has these like Burl Marx flame vibes to it. It was very weird. And then this one came out, I kind of like it. And then there's a new leaf coming out, so it'll be interesting to see how this one looks compared to these. And I think if it continues, I might just take this as a cutting and have it as my own sort of mutant version of a Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, but the rest of it looks relatively normal. Anyway, so that's the one that I had. And when I saw these ones with like little tiddler leaves, I found them really cute and just thought, you know what, I could just throw these in the bin, but I'm gonna take them home. Okay, can I get this guy out too? Oof. I think that's Rhaphidophora too, although it kind of looks like an Epipremnum, doesn't it? But I'm pretty sure these are the only things that I put in here were Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. With that global green, or I can't can't remember what the other one, there were two different suggestions that a bunch of you guys were having, that it was either global green or it was emerald green or something like that. So yeah, I'm still not really sure, but it seems to be doing pretty well. So yeah, I think what I'm gonna do, this is so annoying when you put one of these cuttings in and it gets caught on the rim here. So when you try and pull it like that, it gets wedged. And you need tweezers or chopsticks or something to be able to kind of coax it out easily. Come on, can we do it? No, not easily. I think I'm gonna need some tweezers. Come on, Billy. Come on. Come on, you bastard. Come on, don't make me go up and get the tweezers. I think I'm gonna have to, or else I'm gonna end up breaking this thing. So I've got my toolkit here, and somewhere deep inside this sucker is my biology bachelor's degree dissecting kit. I'm so glad I kept this thing. When did I buy this? This was bought in 2006, so that was first year biology for me. Man, I'm so glad I'm still using this. Anyway, so it comes with all these tools, which is kind of cool, but what I'm looking for are these sort of blunt end tweezers, and I think this is perfect. So there we go. I reckon these are going to stay in water for a while. They're not looking too bad, but I want to see some secondary roots come out, and they're probably a week or two away from that. Guess we'll see how they go. But there's also a shitload of algae in here, so I'm going to give this a quick clean out. And I think from the previous video, I had these reverted Monstera adansonii cuttings that I had taken from the plant to try and encourage the plant to go back to its variegated form. I'll chuck these into the water with these guys and we'll see how they go. I might not actually use this vessel because it'll get overcrowded. All right, so I've grabbed myself a jar here. And if you're really anal about the algae and not wanting to grow back very quickly, what you could do is soak these guys in hydrogen peroxide, and that should kill off a bunch of the algae, and then you can just chuck them in the water. I'm not too phased, and I am wondering whether or not I just leave this in water for a bit longer. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't really rush up potting it. I don't know. What do you guys reckon? It does have quite a bit of roots. I can probably chuck it into some moss here as a substrate, or even some leca. Maybe we do leca. Yeah, maybe we do like a little tiddler cup of leca. I don't think I've ever done something that small with leca. Maybe we give it a whirl, see what happens. Okay, reservoir. Boom. Maybe we do, how much? There we go, yeah, perfect. This will be fun. A tiny, tiny, tiny little semi-hydro setup. I think this is the smallest one I've ever done. So there we go. I think the only issue here is going to be making sure that it is constantly hydrated, because it's so small, it's likely to evaporate out relatively quickly. I'm just trying to get some of the smaller balls of leca to chuck on the top here. My daughter saw these the other day and was so angry at me I wouldn't let her eat them. And I'm like, they're not chocolate, damn it. You'll put this in your mouth and break your teeth. And she's 20 months old, so she was crying, she was throwing a hissy fit, and I'm just like, mate, how do I communicate to you that it is not that I don't want to give you a little bit of chocolate, it is that you will break your damn teeth, without just saying, here, try, go for it, go for it. You've got baby teeth anyway, right? I didn't do that. Okay, so I've got my hydro solution here. I am going to pour it a little bit above the bottom of these roots, probably to about there, see how we go. Because they're water roots, they should probably be able to handle it okay without rotting, you would imagine. You would at least hope so. But again, I'm not too emotionally attached to this plant. I just kind of want to see what's going to happen, So there we go. That is the current setup. Yeah. If you are worried about it being exposed to light a lot and you don't want that algae, what you can do is probably just get another cup and paint it and use that as sort of is it a cache-pot? Is that what you call it? The French hidden pot, cache-pot, cachet. Yeah, you could just do something like that. I'm not really too phased. So I think I'm just gonna leave it like so. And besides that, guys, do these have holes in the bottom? They do. I might give, I don't think these do. I might give these guys a little bit of an extra boost of watering. I think most of that just went onto the table because this moss was slightly dry, not too bad, but it's going to dry out quickly anyway. And yeah, guess we'll see how it goes. And I hope these scalprums really take off. I think that's probably my favorite Alocasia. These guys just look like crocodile skin and they get really dark the bigger they get, I think. From what I understand, I've got one here that's mature. It's not looking too hot. It's on one of the shelves down the bottom there. It's sort of hard to get to, so I'm not going to grab it. But it flowered for me and all the leaves have kind of wilted and yeah, aren't having a good time of it. So, you know, what I could do, instead of spilling water everywhere, is put these into little cash pots as well. Okay, there we go. Bit of water. So we've got loads of little plants at the moment. And I guess lastly, I wonder, is it a good idea whilst propagating to just use your sort of nutrient solution, hydroponics nutrient solution? Maybe we just give it a go. These propagations have been there for ages anyway. So perhaps we just chuck them in. I mean, these ones don't have any roots, so I guess we'll see how they go. But these other ones have been in there for quite a while, so maybe the nutrients will give them a bit of a boost. So we'll just see how they go. Again, as I said in the previous video, I think don't be afraid to sort of experiment with these plants when they're not really, you know, your precious plants that you're incredibly worried about living or dying or whatever. Don't be afraid to experiment, you know, give different things a try. That's how you learn, right? And when you're not really that emotionally invested in whether or not the plants die, you're probably likely to try more risky things or riskier things. And as a result, you'll learn, you know, certain techniques and methods that you can use on the rarer plants, and you'll feel much more confident when you know, come across those in the future. Anyway, that's probably enough for today's episode, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Let me know if you've got any questions or comments. Leave them down below. Let's continue the convo there. And in the meantime, as you guys probably know, YouTube recommends this video. Go check it out, give it a clickaroo, and I'll see you there. Tooroo.